Tonight we engage the heart of humanity. And what does being human really mean? I was away on sabbatical in 2013, and it dawned on me that human beings are bodhisattva. And the bodhisattva is not a Buddhist word. Bodhisattva is actually describing what we are. Therefore, our purpose on our planet and our purpose with all of life here, maybe even in all of cosmos. So thank you for joining me tonight as we take up this subject and explore it just a little bit. Would everyone please touch your heart, put your hand on your heart, and maybe close your eyes. And just feel your presence. Immediately, something very powerful, calming, and integral happens when a human being touches or holds their heart. And as we do so, you can open your eyes. As we do so, that experience, whether we sustain that or just simply to help ourselves center at some point during the day, we do that. A simple finger or two to the heart, or a whole hand on the heart. We find that that experience is vibrant, unmistakable, and palpable. The heart is real. And the heart always conveys to us as human beings reality. It is a wider wisdom than our concrete mind, than all the data that we've put in our mind. So the reality that the heart taps into, which is now scientifically understood and quantified, is a larger reality, is a wider scope of reality. And that experience of width, scope, peace, genuineness, integrity is palpable. We just experience it. Others experience it when we are centered in our heart. Research equipment picks it up. And animals, plants, and everything around us notices and experiences this quality of the vibrant heart. And it is that is telling us something very important about being human and wondrous about being human that maybe we don't take into full consideration throughout the day, and maybe we do. There's a reason why it's a palpable experience and why those around us, including animals and plants, experience this vibrancy of the heart. It's because we as human beings are hardwired for goodness. And we are hardwired biologically with our neural transmitters. The plasticity of our brain wants to rewire to that which is happy, good, and of benefit to ourselves and others. Psychologically, we are hardwired to gaze into one another's eyes, to smile, to seek those who need help, to want to help those in need. And spiritually, we are hardwired for goodness and love. And all the spiritual practices in every tradition, everywhere on the planet, have always taught that we are here to help one another. to protect one another. We innately know what is harmful and what is harmless, innately so. So we are hardwired for altruism, for kindness, for respect, for a smile. And again, these things, these biological and present experiential qualities are telling us something very important. The importance is the heart, and that a human being living from the heart has the capacity of transformation. The heart is an alchemical agent. It changes everything. Vibrationally, that can be measured by a wide variety of research instruments now. It's not only a monk that's been practicing compassion for 20 or 30 years in which that can be measured. That can be measured in children, in infants. It can be measured in a nurse, in a firefighter, in a human being when they are lifting something immeasurably out of proportion to save someone, like a human being who lifts a car off another human being. So there's something about the heart, not just the organ, and more importantly, not the organ, but the whole presence of the heart chakra, and everything that the heart points to, that says to us that transformation is what we are here for, to transform the world, to transform one another through the goodness of the heart. And it is that, and that kind of download and revelation that I had when I was on a sabbatical a few years ago, that has inspired me to bring forward a small set of online programs. There'll be 3 of them, and they're 4 weeks long, and they'll be happening on Thursday nights, starting next Thursday. And I want to tell you a little bit about them. But in order to do so, let's take another step back. Human beings are also hardwired for common sense. We see what is obvious that needs to be done. We recognize the obvious ways to accomplish something. We have many ideas about what is of benefit in common. They are agreed upon, common, accepted ideas among all of humanity. There will be cultural and traditional kind of variations on the theme, but overall there is a sense of what is common sense. But common sense oftentimes simply serves one person or a clan or a nation, and doesn't necessarily serve the greater good, the common good, the good of all lives. And an example of that might be, for instance, how we use fossil fuels or deforest a certain, section of forest, or clear cut this or that. So I'm using those as very blatant examples of what seems to have common sense. Well, we need fuel to run or to produce electricity. We might need uh, uh, any variety of things that might say use some of the natural resources that are around us. So that, of course, seems to have common sense. But is there a way to do that that also acknowledges the common good? The common good of, yes, the forest or the mountainside, of, yes, the natural flora and fauna that live there, as well as accomplishing the necessary needs of the human beings. So part of the awareness that I think all of us also carry as human beings is that there is a common sense to the wider good of all of life. That when the wider good of all of life is addressed in an interconnected commonality way, when its interbeing is addressed or acknowledged, then of course not only do we accomplish the needs of the present, but the future generations and the earth overall is also attended in its needs. So this idea of common sense equaling or being implicit in the needs of the common good, in the wider good, is taught within multiple traditions of the planet. Almost all Eastern traditions, the Chakra Tantric being a Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the Tao Te Ching, the Gita, which is out of the Vedic and Hindu tradition, as well as the native traditions around the world, all have the idea of life is one, all beings are one. For instance, in Lakota, it is mitakuye oyasane. So this idea of together in the intricacies of interconnectedness, can we all address the necessary needs of all beings? So then, that then is actually something that also we are hardwired for. As intelligent, creative beings, we are always looking for what is something that we can do that makes the greatest sense, is worth our effort, is worth our time, and is worth the investment because it actually serves the common or greater good. One of the other things that we notice as human beings innately is we notice freedom and imprisonment, curtailment, limitation. We notice that too. And in fact, it makes most of us quite uncomfortable. We then further might get more uncomfortable when we think that there's nothing we can do or nothing we should do. And so this wonderful quote from Elie Wiesel, as he was speaking about a Hasidic person who was often caught into a rapture, but was basically an enlightened person of the Hasidic Jewish community. And whenever he would see something or someone imprisoned in some way, imprisoned in their own thoughts, kept curtailed by a culture or a cultural moray, he would either speak out about it just in a flat, common way, or if in the case of an animal, he would often do something about it. And in this case, he came to an inn, saw birds in a cage, and let them go, let them free. So when asked why he did that, he simply said, birds are meant to be free. Birds are meant to fly. So as we engage this idea of common sense, common good, and Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva sees that what is needed is what is common to the being. In the case of the birds being freed from the cage, that is because birds are not meant to be in cages, or else they would be born that way. So when we step back from our personal preferences, from our personal desires, and we engage life from the holism of what can be a human view of the interconnectedness of life, and certainly is the view, if we step back to the interconnectedness of life, we all will see that life is interconnected. Then we will equally see and equally experience with our heart what is meant to be. And that is at the core of the purpose of being human, to feel with our heart what is truly meant to be. And if we were to go back to how we started this evening and put our hand on our heart, or simply touch our heart is pretty infallible. I mean, it's pretty right on all the time as to being able to discern what our role is, what our responsibility is, what our joy and happiness can be. And so we, like the birds, we too, with the birds, are meant to be free. So I've used the word bodhisattva now just a couple of times. Let's define it. It's a Sanskrit word. Sanskrit is a very ancient language. It's actually the root. Many words find their way into Latin, and then from Latin into the variety of Western languages. But we will find, if we really look deeply at the etymology, that many words have Sanskrit roots. This is how ancient the language is. It might have been a pan-global language in a very deep ancient time. So bodhisattva is a Sanskrit word, and it is a noun, and simply it translates as a concept. It's describing something rather wide, and that is, or at least in my interpretation of it, it is a human being who lives from the radiance and presence of the power of an awakened heart. What the word literally translates as is light, bodhi, sattva, being. And my suggestion is that human beings overall are bodhisattvas, that's our expression on this planet. We might be a bit in our youth in experiencing that or expressing that, not yet quite mature in the expression of that, but nonetheless, like an acorn will eventually create a magnificent great oak tree, at some point that tree is still in its adolescence, not fully grown. Nonetheless, the acorn, the germinating component of that, contain the totality of even the great tree. And that is us, I believe, that all of us are bodhisattva as human beings, that's the bodhisattva and human being are equivalent terms. And that it's simply a matter of our maturing as a collective as well as individuals within that collective that brings forward this light, this radiance, this presence of the awakened heart. Goethe said in actually the play Faust, formation, transformation, eternal minds, eternal recreation. So he was explaining how we, as human beings, we can take any situation, we can formalize it, and thus make it rigid, unbending, a prison. We can transform that something, make it always in a creative or recreative process. Thus do we free ourselves of any limitation that might have gone with the form. We also find ourselves always in a constantly creative, curious, illumining, inquiring, and transforming, alchemizing state. That too would be part of bodhisattva. And an example of this is the image on the screen. This child is holding up an artichoke that she grew in an urban garden in LA. So many people might know about the various endeavors around the planet to reclaim through kindness and through common sense areas of either cities or desertified areas in, for instance, Africa, where a small amount of attention in a common sense way will grow something brand new there. And not only will it grow produce, but then the people who grow that produce will then benefit from that produce. And in the case of LA, Los Angeles, that's being done just on the little strips of land that are on the curbs. It's being done in empty lots, vacant lots. And in Africa, where it's being done, they're finding that by simply grazing animals differently, that the entire ecosystem bounces back instead of being chewed down to nothing, where then it turns into desert. So here, part of Bodhisattva goes back to this idea of common sense and common good. The Bodhisattva is always in the business, if you will, of transformation, of using the eternal aspects of our mind, not just the concrete, by rote, information bound quality of mind, but the eternal capacity of our mind to constantly recreate reality, the reality that one lives, that a community lives, eventually, of course, that our world lives. And so we have been told now, first, we've been told for thousands of years through, again, almost every spiritual and philosophical tradition that has come down through humanity, that there is actually heart-mind, that to think of the mind as only the explanatory or analytical component of our thinking processes, and not to include the actual quality of our emotions, our sensibilities, our intuitive capacity, etc., is to have divided something which is actually non-divided, that is inseparable. So heart-mind is what we have as human beings, and modern science has actually determined that we have 3 brains, one in the brain, one in the heart, and one in the gut, and that these 3 brains act as one. They feed one another different kinds of information, and it is in the unity, the unification, and the coherence of all 3 that actually the human being thrives, human creativity thrives, and our place in the interconnectedness of the world thrives as well. Well, heart-mind is at the core of Bodhisattva. So again, the key here with Bodhisattva is that this is not a Buddhist word. The Buddha used the word, and therefore all of Buddhism uses the word. But the Buddha used the word because it's Sanskrit, and he lived in India. And Sanskrit had been the language in India for a very long time before the Buddha. So Bodhisattva, in understanding it as the limitless potential of light, light as in heart light, light as in mind light, light as in lightness of being, as in courtesy, kindness, ingenuity, as in intuition, revelation, even enlightenment. These things are describing to us our human capacity. And there are 3 things that are very easy to see within us as human beings that are also describing aspects of our bodhisattva nature. The first is love. Love, as defined by Lama Yeshe, Tibetan Lama, is the wish that others be happy. So that is as simple as holding a door for somebody out of courtesy, letting somebody go ahead of you when you have a whole basket full of groceries and the other person has 2 items. Let others be happy. It is our family. It is our friends. It is the ease with which we interact with strangers when we meet them. Let others be happy and wish for their happiness. So there are many ways in which that happens in the examples already given, as well as there is war in our world. There are refugees in our world. What are the ways in which that we as human beings and the interconnectedness of one another, what are the ways in which we can just have an eye out for those that need help, that are unhappy? It is not for me to say to anybody what anyone could do, and maybe it's the right thing to do. But all of us, again, we're hardwired. We're hardwired for kindness. So never let current societal norms, which somehow have taken a little bit of a turn from ethics, never let that determine what's happening in one's heart. We are Bodhisattva. We are here to change the world in a good way. The second thing that Lama Yeshe offers about the 3 qualities of Bodhisattva that are common to us all, and that is compassion. It is when we find the suffering of others unbearable. Now, for most people, that is a loved one. When a loved one is suffering, is in pain, has cancer, our child is sick with the cold, somebody has lost someone that they've loved, lost even a pet that they loved dearly, then it hurts. It hurts to see them suffer. We want to do what we can for them. Their suffering is unbearable to us in the moment. And as we extend that beyond just those who are familiar to us, those that we cherish in our lives, then we see that nobody likes to suffer. Nobody likes to. And were the shoe on the other foot, we would want other people to care. So this heartful response to our world is what a bodhisattva response is. And again, the thesis that I'm putting forward is that we have that capacity, every single one of us. And finally, the third quality is equanimity. And Lama Yeshe says that that's the awareness that friend, enemy, or stranger are equal from one point of view and from the important point of view. That again, everyone simply wants to be happy. Everyone simply wants to feel safe, secure, to feel loved, to have a roof over their head, to not be like this little dog and this horse. This is an image from the flood of Katrina. Well, the dog luckily found the horse and scampered up on its back. So whether or not these two would be considered friends or enemies, who knows? They were probably total strangers. But again, like we, life on earth is actually fundamentally hardwired for kindness. And although, yes, there's predator-prey among the animals, and even among some plants, there is certainly that among human beings as well. But it is not the majority, just like not the majority within animals. The majority of animals are the prey, not the predators. In other words, they are the ones that have no interest in eating one another, in taking from one another. And the same is so of human beings. So very briefly, the online courses that I'll be doing that I hope you might have an interest in will look at this idea of the awakening heart of humanity and therefore its role going into our future, which we are seeing already we are seeing, aren't you seeing it? That like overnight there is a ripening going on, even where you have something like the meditations for peace, and hundreds of thousands of people signing up for these or gathering together for them. Um, there are many examples that I think that we can all say that we are experiencing or witnessing around us, where there is, like, it's as if humanity has been kind of sleeping in a little bit of a dream state over a while, and just all of a sudden just kind of literally waking up and going, oh yes, let me help you, oh yes, I know how to fix that, or whatever it might be. So the first of the three courses, they are all 4-week online courses. So of course the ease of an online course applies. Just like tonight, the majority of the people who registered for this presentation are not here live. They will partake of it by webcast at a time that's convenient for them and their life's responsibilities. So that's the joy of an online class. And the first one will look at literally the science in a kind of wondrous physics, amazing way, without getting bogged down in terms that I certainly can't speak about deeply, but that I have a great interest in, such as entanglement theory, biodynamic fields, and Rupert Sheldrake's work on morphic field entrainment. These things, although these sound like abstract ideas, they're not. The picture on the right says it all. Literally, we radiate. We are energy beings. We know from even just a quantum physics point of view that there's nothing solid to a human being. We are energy, quality, and space. And the energy, has its qualities of light or heat or, ingenuity even. But we are not these solid forms. And so the radiance and the electromagnetic fields that come off of us according to our state of mind, our state of emotions, our integrity, and our heart, the coherence of our three brains. These are literal. They go out from us, they create um, an interactive, dynamic webwork of energy and quality among us. It is the reason why there is telepathy, why there is intuition, why we do get a sense of when we ask for something, oftentimes it comes. These have to do with entanglement theory and the biodynamic fields that we create. And then there is the morphic field entrainment. The morphic field simply means morph. Here comes from transmorph or I can't think of the word right now that he uses. But it is to, like a metamorphose, like a butterfly. It is that. It is to literally change from a caterpillar, a pupa, into a butterfly. Well, that's what happens with the morphic field. So we know that. We know that when we are sad, somebody coming along and bringing us outside into the sunshine and going for a walk, that can very easily affect us positively. And equally so, somebody who's angry and comes into the workplace, it affects a lot of people. This has to do with the morphic field and the entanglement theories. So when we look at this from a Bodhisattva point of view, that human beings living from the fullness of their heart and how their heart interacts with their mind, this changes our environment, it changes ourselves, it changes our chemistry, it changes our relationships, and as Goethe said, takes the formulation that we are as a human being and transforms that. The second program will be one that looks primarily at the chakra changes, and I'm going to focus specifically on the love and sacrifice petals of the chakras. For those that don't know, there are 3 tiers of petals, like 3 layers of petals within the chakras, each of the chakras. And those 3 layers of petals are the knowledge layer, the love layer, and the sacrifice or surrender or will layer. It's given a number of terms. But we can understand from the 3 terms I gave, will, surrender, and sacrifice, that sacrifice is not some martyrdom situation or some, we don't want to do that kind of a situation. No, it is instead to realize that a sacredness is happening here, and that the birth of that sacredness and the support of that sacredness requires one's surrender of their personal will, such that a higher, greater will is what pours through one. So bodhicitta is a second word that we'll get to know more. Again, it's a Sanskrit word, and bodhicitta literally means heart, mind, or lighted mind. And it's about the altruistic attitude of a human being, and how when we live from heart, altruism, kindness, and the ingenuity that goes with seeking to live a compassionate life, that actually has a very real effect upon our chakra system. It also affects our DNA, so I'll be mentioning that within the 4 weeks. And then we have the last segment or set of 4, and that is to look at what is called the yoga of clear light. This is a yoga that comes from the East. It was given by Naropa, a highly realized and enlightened being, and in the 1100s. And he devised 6 different yogas that are all having to do with how to accomplish enlightenment in 6 different ways. My focus is not to, and nor could I, give that method for that purpose. I'm not equipped to do that, nor am I, capable from a lineage point of view, capable of doing that. However, I have practiced some of the clear light yoga and see that it too is very easily brought forward from a conceptual point of view, so that we understand that we are already living aspects of this yoga. In other words, we are already living on a common daily basis. Human beings are living some of the factors necessary to speed one along the path of enlightenment. And as we realize that we are already living factors that speed us along the path of enlightenment, then we actually will, of course, effect that greater light, that greater compassion, and that enlightenment, which will serve all beings, including ourselves, far more quickly, far more effectively. So it's simply a factor of noticing what is already going on inside us and all around us. So that's the last of the 3 modules or sets. So as we close it up tonight, this short little presentation, I hope that you might join me for Thursday nights, at least for some of the sets of 4. They run one after the other, that is to say the first set, second set, third set, like that, into the summer. Thursday nights is the night for them. And I think that whoever joins me for this, I can only say that I've been completely jazzed by this understanding that this is our nature. This Bodhisattva quality, that it literally is an equatable term for the term human being. And as we look at through these three sets of classes, as we look at the depth of that and the truth of that through the common experiences that we will have to talk about common experiences as well as some scientific theory when we talk about entanglement theory. When we offer things from Rupert Sheldrake about morphic fields, he uses animals as well as human beings in the common ways in which we affect one another. And similarly so, for the chakras, to really understand the love and the sacrifice petals of the chakras and which ones are affected and open and unfold as we express bodhicitta, as we express heart-mind in the common everyday ways that all of us do and can. That's very powerful to understand because that then speaks of our natural unfolding. And of course, when we talk about that, we'll also talk about some of the often medical issues that arise as our chakras unfold, and we might not realize that that's what's going on. So, if you have an interest, please just simply go to spiritfire.com, and then in the main navigation button, you would go to education or coming events, either one, and scroll down and you'll see the Path of Humanity. And there's a Tuesday night set of classes that has already begun, but the registrations are open for that. And these are the Thursday night classes that'll be running through the summer. Love to have you there. And I'll just stop and see if there's any thoughts or questions before we close it up. Well, thank you, Eliza. Nice to have you comment. And thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful night and create it as you go.